Powerful today, the act of remembrance. We're going to explore how a single, simple act of devotion can literally ripple outwards, affecting our health, shaping the course of history, and even inspiring some absolutely breathtaking art. So, let's get into it.
I want to start with a hook, a question that kind of bridges the spiritual and the scientific. Is it possible that an act of faith, something deeply personal, could have a real, measurable effect on your body? The answer, as you'll see, is pretty fascinating.
Because, this isn't just about prayer in a simple sense. We're looking at remembrance as this huge, multi-layered idea in Islamic tradition. It's a practice that connects our quietest, most personal moments to these grand, sweeping movements of culture and even civilization itself.
So, first up, let's look at the hard data. How does a spiritual practice actually translate into a biological response? Let's check out the science. Okay, so the central practice we're looking at is called dhikr. Think of it as a kind of spiritual meditation. It's a conscious, focused effort to bring God into your awareness, often by repeating sacred phrases. At its heart, it's all about creating a spiritual bond, a feeling of closeness.
And here's the proof in the pudding. A study took two groups of older folks with hypertension. As you can see, they both started with pretty much the same average blood pressure. But look what happens after the test. The control group, their pressure actually went up a tiny bit. But the group practicing dhikr, wow, a significant drop. And that p-value of 0.000, that's the scientific way of saying this was absolutely not a coincidence. This is a real, statistically significant result.
So how in the world does this work? Well, the study found a really clear mechanism. Think of your nervous system as having a gas pedal and a brake. The rhythmic, focused nature of dhikr hits the brake. That's your parasympathetic nervous system. It calms your body down, countering that fight or flight response, and it releases endorphins, which just makes you feel calm and comfortable.
Now, right alongside dhikr, there's another key practice, istighfar. This is the act of seeking forgiveness. So while dhikr is about remembering God's presence, istighfar is about acknowledging our own imperfections and reaching out for divine mercy. It's another really powerful tool for, spiritual and mental upkeep.
So you see, it all comes down to this incredible connection around the heart. I mean that in two ways. The practice of remembrance can literally calm the physical heart, bringing down your blood pressure. And at the exact same time, it brings peace to the spiritual heart, soothing the soul and giving you a real sense of tranquility.
Okay, this is where we zoom out. Big time. We've seen the deeply personal, internal impact of remembrance. But what happens when that remembrance becomes a shared, collective experience? How can a memory fuel a movement and literally change the world?
To see how that works, we're going to turn to one of the most powerful examples of collective remembrance in all of Islamic history, the tragedy of Karbala.
This quote from Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, really gets to the core of it all. Back in 680 AD, on the plains of Karbala, he and his small group of followers made a stand against what they saw as a corrupt and tyrannical ruler. For Imam Hussein, living a life of compromise with injustice, that was a disgrace worse than death. And that is why this story has lasted for centuries. The annual remembrance of Karbala, it's not just about mourning something that happened a long time ago. It's about remembering the principles he died for, a timeless, universal call to stand for justice no matter the cost.
And you can literally trace the impact of this memory through history. It has been a revolutionary spark for centuries. In the 8th century, it inspired real uprisings. By the 16th century, entire dynasties were building commemoration ceremonies into their state identity. And fast forward all the way to the 20th century, and those very same ceremonies were being used to mobilize people during the Iranian Revolution. It's incredible.
So here's the big takeaway for this section. Remembrance on this scale is transformative. It takes a deeply personal emotion, grief, and channels it into a collective identity, a powerful force for social and political action. That shared memory becomes a blueprint for change.
Of course, for a memory to survive for more than 1,000 years, it can't just be an idea. It needs a vehicle. It needs art. And that brings us to the powerful poetic traditions that keep the story of Karbala alive and breathing.
One of the most important of these art forms is the Marsiya. And this isn't just any sad poem. It's a highly structured, epic elegy that's dedicated to retelling the tragedy of Karbala. It's basically a literary monument built out of grief and commemoration. And we should be clear, this isn't just some forgotten folk tradition. The Marsiya is a deeply sophisticated art form. It's the subject of serious academic study, and it's revered for its incredible literary and emotional power. So what makes a marcia, well, a marcia? Well, it has some very distinct features. It's often written in these 6-line stanzas. Its whole purpose is to evoke this deep sense of pathos, of shared grief, and it's designed to be performed, recited out loud, dramatically, at gatherings called a majlis, where it just masterfully weaves together history, morality, and raw human emotion.
But remembrance isn't only expressed through grief. There's another, equally powerful artistic tradition that focuses on something else entirely, on ecstatic devotion and praise.
And that brings us to Qawwali. This is a vibrant, powerful, soul-stirring form of Sufi devotional music. You know, while a marzia might lead to tears of sorrow, Qawwali aims to do something different. It wants to transport the listener to a state of spiritual ecstasy, of pure, joyful connection with the divine.
You can see the contrast so clearly when you put them side by side. Marcia is all about finding catharsis through shared grief and mourning. Qawwali is about seeking spiritual union through music and praise. One is rooted in sorrow, the other in joy and love. They are two profound paths of remembrance, just traveling on very different emotional highways.
And the tradition of Qawwali is just filled with absolute legends. I mean, you've got its pioneer, the 13th century poet Amir Khusro. You've got purists like Habib Painter. And of course, you have global powerhouses like the Sabri brothers, whose passionate performances brought Qawwali to audiences all over the world.
You know, this beautiful line just perfectly captures the ultimate goal of Qawwali and so much of Sufi practice. It's this idea of dissolving the ego, of the individual droplet into the vastness of the divine ocean. It's a form of remembrance that leads to this incredible feeling of complete and total unity.
So, let's bring it all home. We've gone on quite a journey, right? We started with a measurable change in our own blood pressure, in our brain chemistry. From there, we went to a political movement that has lasted for centuries, and then to the absolute heights of poetry and music. It's so clear that the act of remembrance, it's so much more than just memory. It's a fundamental force that can heal the body, unite a community, and shape the very course of human history.
Thank you for watching. Take care. Allah Hafiz. If you support me, please scan and pay any amount.